Hello to one and all. Welcome to the Preston Hub. This is Sense-Wide Employment Services under Victorian Deaf Society. We're here tonight to talk about DeafShare, and the focus of this evening is the NDIS. So the Darebin Council has given us some funds to be able to provide services and also information to the local community. So this is the last workshop of a series, and this is an opportunity to be able to network this evening. So those of you that have RSVP'd, you're either here or you're able to look online. We have two interpreters here this evening. We have Kim Saxton, who's currently not interpreting, and there's also Karen Clare, who's currently interpreting for me. So if you hear two different voices, you'll know who those interpreters are. So those of you that are not fluent in Auslan will be able to listen to the interpretation. Now, we have another special person with me this evening, who's Adam Tickler.
Adam, what's your sign? This is my sign name. I work at VicDeaf, so I'll talk about my role now, shall I, Libby? I work as support services coordinator in the area. I organise support workers, and I focus on casual workforce. We have a group of casuals who provide support services in Victoria, in the community, and that's supporting a range of services. That's what I look after.
Okay, so I'm here this evening because I'm the Youth Engagement Officer at VicDeaf. I have organised this particular project, DeafShare. And so Adam and I have joined in partnership tonight to talk about the NDIS, and specifically the services in relation to Adam's role, and also give you some ideas about the sorts of things that you can consider having in your package for the NDIS. So thank you to those that are here this evening. We've just got a few items of housekeeping. In the event of emergency, you can leave through the exit as I've shown you. So I think without further ado, I think we'll continue on this evening. I just wanted to add too, in the next hour, if you want to ask any questions or specific points that you would like to have raised, you can make a comment. We have Shirley here this evening who will be monitoring any questions, so please feel free if you would like to have any questions posed, and we will also take turns in translating those questions into Auslan for our deaf viewers this evening.
Okay, so tonight we'll be talking about the process of having an NDIS plan and the package, the funding. So when that package of money arrives, what you can do with the money, how it works, what services are available, a whole range of topics we'll talk about. But I thought we'd start talking about previous to the planning, what you need to do, what you need to think about, what services might be good for you. And when you receive services, you need to think about what you had prior to the NDIS, what you had in the home, perhaps a cleaner, something like that, interpreting services. You don't have to only stick with what you had previously. The NDIS is very new and it's a more flexible model, a more flexible scheme. So you might think about what you had previously, but also what you might like to have. So you have a pre-NDIS planning conversation. So think about what you need to talk about in that planning session. So you might think as a deaf person you would like interpreting for social events. Previously you might not have been able to really engage in those social activities. So you can think about that. When you meet the person from the NDIS, you can make sure that you have that covered. You can talk about that to them. So you may need a support worker. Perhaps you would like to become more independent person that might include learning how to cook or clean the house or travel on public transport. Those kind of things, you can put that in your NDIS plan so that you can become more independent. And funding might be covered for that support worker. I'd like to talk also about the pre-planning, that process. So really there are 2 points. You can have a formal meeting, like an interview, with a person to help you prepare for that planning process. Questions will be asked about your life. So that will prepare you for the NDIS process. You can also meet with VicDeaf for that pre-planning process. Other organisations provide that as well. So that's a formal process, or you can just consider that yourself. Think about your life, what you want to do, and jot those things down so that when you have your planning meeting, you can tell the NDIS planner what you need. So I've said twice now, I've mentioned the NDIS planning, so we'll talk about that a little bit. The NDIS meets with you so they know what package you might be eligible for. So you have an interview with them, and you don't have to go alone to that meeting. You can have a support person with you. Could be a family member, an advocate, someone who knows your situation. They can come with you as a support person. That's possible. So the meeting itself, the NDIS planner will ask you questions about your life. How you do certain things, what do you think about certain things, do you need support for things? So they have a whole range of questions for you, and you can talk to them about the needs you have and what aspirations you have, what goals you have, what you'd like to achieve in your life. So you talk to them about that, and they usually set up a schedule, a plan that covers what you need in your life. So one might be capacity building, skills development. That's one line, item line. It might be that you want to become more independent on public transport. You might need a mentor. So you will be able to see what is available for your development yourself and what support you can ask for, and possibly receive funding for through the NDIS. But it's very important in that pre-planning process to think about everything, because the planning meeting proper with the NDIS can be a bit nerve-wracking, and we want to make sure that you don't miss out. So that pre-planning process is very important for you to go through so that you're prepared for that meeting. That's crucial.
Okay, just to add to that, Adam, the pre-planning is really an opportunity for you to think about your life. We never really have the opportunity to sit down and think about how we run our lives and what we do in our life. Okay, so this is an opportunity for you to do that. The pre-planning allows you to reflect on the types of barriers that you might have experienced in your life. Perhaps interpreters haven't been provided, you haven't had support workers. There might be additional devices that you might need to be able to get through your life to ensure that your life in the future is much easier, and your access needs are the same as anyone else. So pre-planning is incredibly important for you, really just to reflect on your life and every facet of your life, and also to prepare you more fully for when you go in and meet with the planner. Now we talk a lot, Adam, don't we, about this particular acronym, which is called an LAC, Local Area Coordinator. That means it's a person that will interview you. They ask you a lot of questions, as Adam said. They'll ask you about why you've approached the NDIS for a package. What sort of funding are you looking for? They'll ask you lots of questions and build your plan. Okay? They want to get some idea about your personality, your life, and try and fit the plan around that and your needs. And as you said before, Adam, you can also bring a support person with you to make you feel more comfortable and more confident to be able to explain yourself and to tell your story to the planner. So you can have a support worker there. Now, don't get me wrong, if you have a support worker there, it doesn't mean they're going to speak on your behalf. Okay, they're just there to be able to prompt you from time to time if you've forgotten something, give you a few suggestions. Okay, but it's about you telling your story. It's an opportunity for your voice to be heard with the planner.
That's right, Liv. And just to add to the meeting, you might wonder who can be involved. Sometimes family can be involved, but they can't talk on your behalf. Sorry, the person who is in the plan might have, for instance, autism, so they can't speak, they can't express themselves, their story. So in that instance, the support person can add comment about that person. It could be a mother or a family member, a brother, a sibling. They will be able to speak on that for that person because they know them. It can also be a professional, an occupational therapist, an OT, perhaps a person who knows that individual well and can speak for them if they need to make sure that their plan is covered. So again, if that person can't express themselves fully, their support person can help.
And as Adam said before, the people that will be applying for an NDIS plan are quite diverse in the type of disability they have, and autism and Down syndrome, people that are deaf, people that are blind, and those that have multi-disability. So I think we might move on to the next topic.
So I'd like to talk now about a variety of services that you may be able to access through the National Disability Insurance Scheme. So I talked about a support worker, that's my area, that's my focus of work, but there are many different services available. And I have a few examples with me, but again, it's very broad, the range of services available to you. So there's support workers, and that might include people who need physical support, so helping with movement, feeding, for instance, cleaning the house, things related to people's everyday life. We also have Auslan training or tutoring. You may think, oh, my Auslan skills are basic and I would like to develop those, and you would like some tutoring, so you can get that through the NDIS. You might be a deaf person but your family and friends don't sign, and that can be available for them as part of your community engagement. Transport as well, that can be included in your plan. So if you're having trouble accessing public transport, for instance, taxi might be another option, you're facing barriers, you can ask the NDIS that you want to be involved in community activities the same as everyone else, but transport is a barrier for you. You can make sure that that's included in your plan. So that money is included in your plan so that you can get yourself to certain activities. There's counselling support as well. Interpreting support can be available. Support for everyday things that you perhaps have missed in the past. As I said before, you might not have had access to interpreting in social events because you couldn't afford that service out of your own pocket, but now the NDIS may be able to cover that for you, and it means that you have access just as other people do in the community. Would you like to add anything more, Liv, to that?
I'm just wondering, Adam, I suppose Vic Deaf, does that have a mentoring type service or support? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, we do. We have mentoring support at Vic Deaf. And that involves maybe younger people who want to find a job, for instance. They'd like to become a professional, but they're not quite sure how to do that. So they can have a mentor that can model for them. The NDIS can fund that mentor to show the young person how to become professional, how to develop their writing skills, for instance, to give them the skills to really achieve employment, for instance, or transition to tertiary education, or perhaps, well, a whole range of things.
I've got another question for you too. What about employment support? Exactly does that mean?
Well, some employment support is available, but some is funded through another program, and that would be Disability Employment Services, or DES for short. So those services focus on the workplace. They can work with people specifically to find employment and skill development in their area as well. Perhaps people are finding barriers to that. Those kind of things can be supported through Disability Employment Services. Other types of support, though, can be through the NDIS. And that's something that you can ask in your pre-planning meeting. That's a really great question to ask and a great time to ask those type of questions. So you're clear on what can be funded through the NDIS. And it's specific to your situation as well, and they will be able to explain those things to you in that pre-planning meeting. So everyone's situation is different, and specifically to your situation, you need the advice, and that can be got in the pre-planning meeting.
The important thing about the pre-planning meeting is the person that you'll be meeting with, I suppose, is maybe broadly familiar with you or your disability, but doesn't know specifics about you. Okay, so it's about working out what sort of programs and support would suit you best. Those that want further education, those that are wanting employment, everyone has different needs, different life choices. So it's really about meeting with this person, I suppose, and getting a bit of advice as well, because once you meet with your local area coordinator, you'll be able to very clearly articulate that you want to get employment, but you have a number of barriers that you face to be able to gain employment. Those barriers will be fleshed out in your pre-planning meeting, and then you'll be able to elaborate that when you meet with the LAC. Okay, that's why it's incredibly important to meet with a pre-planner. Okay, so Adam, I have another question for you. I've applied for a plan, and then I've received the plan. And maybe in the plan it might have something like mentoring or transportation to assist me to go to and from, I don't know, maybe to do my grocery shopping or other services. How do I make a decision about what service would suit me, who the right person to provide the service is, or which organisation would be the right organisation to provide me with services?
Well, in most plans, they do have a support coordination line, and that money is for someone to help you find those services and to help you work out what services are best for you. There's different ways you can use your money, your NDIS money. Some people like to purchase those services themselves and manage the money themselves. Other people aren't sure how to do that. So we will talk a little more about that soon. But your plan, if it does include support coordination, that means that that's someone else's job to help you with that. If you self-manage the plan, the NDIS website has, well, that's called a portal. The website has a list of all the service, registered service providers. And the NDIA, the agency that registers those services, they have a list. So if you're looking in Melbourne, you can type that into the search engine for that in that portal, and you might see a shortened list. You might want to say a suburb, Mount Waverley for instance, or OTs, occupational therapists. So you can do services, you can do searches for particular services and areas on that website. If you feel a little overwhelmed by that thought and you can't manage the funding yourself or the services yourself, you can ask for support coordination. You can ask for a support worker as well to help you navigate the system and get the right services for your needs.
Okay, thank you very much for answering my question, Anne. Okay, so Auslan classes, Auslan programs. We know that Big Deaf and there are a number of other organisations that run Auslan classes and programs. I'm just thinking about those deaf people in the community that have families that don't sign. Is there able to be funding in the plan to be able to provide for Auslan classes?
Yeah, funding can be provided for that, for the community to be able to communicate with those people. So you can get that tutoring. So it's called language skills, to make sure that deaf people can communicate with others in the community.
Yeah, I know that sometimes there's social events and family events in our lives, parties, might have birthdays, Christmases and so on. You really want to be able to communicate with other family members and you want to communicate directly with them and we want to use our first language, which is Auslan. And it makes it really difficult if no one else in the family can sign. So perhaps that's something you can explain to the local area coordinator from the NDIS, that you really would like to speak to your family members at these events and communicate with them. But it's far too costly for you to pay for an interpreter, but to be able to employ an Auslan interpreter to come in and assist you to communicate, but also be able to educate your family members in Auslan. But you need to be able to explain very clearly that you're wanting your family to learn Auslan to communicate with you. So the planner will be then looking at what they could then offer, and one of the things that could be offered is Auslan classes for your family members.
Great. Shall we move on then?
Yeah, let's move on to the next topic. Okay, so you've done your pre-planning. You then have your appointment with your LAC. And following that appointment, you will then receive your plan, which is a very exciting time. You may be wondering, well, how do you access that plan? What you actually get is a letter. It will say the amount that you'll be in receipt of, and then there will be line items outlining what you're receiving the funds for. Interpreting, there will be a maximum amount. There will be a maximum amount for perhaps equipment such as smoke alarms. If it's perhaps a hearing dog or whatever it happens to be, there'll be various line items and money attached to each of those line items. So that's what will be in the plan. Now, there are 3 specific ways of managing the plan. What this means is, it's not about you receiving the actual funds and putting it in your bank account, okay? The money is set aside for you to be able to be provided with support. So first of all, we have the NDIA, the organisation or the agency that set up the NDIS, the scheme or the program. You can have NDIA managed, which means that you will tell the NDIA or you will tell other agencies that the NDIA manage for you. You will have a number and the NDIA will pay the bills for interpreters, for the devices and all sorts of things. You don't need to worry at all about invoices, taxes, prices or anything. The NDIA will be the ones that will liaise with the interpreting organisations, the organisations that you need the smoke alarms from. Okay, you don't need to do any of that work. You just will be in receipt of your support. You will be able to log in and you will be able to access information online. It will tell you how much is left in each of the line items, how much money is left for interpreting, how much money is left in the devices area. So you're able to keep track of that. Okay, so that's the first way you can manage your plan. The second way is not under the NDIA, okay? It's almost like having a private accountant, usually an organisation. You'll be given a list of those organisations that are registered under the NDIA, and it gives you a little more freedom, because what happens is those that are not registered under the NDIA, you can still do work for you and provide you with a service. Because what happens is they will give you an invoice, you will give that to the third party, like the accountant or the other organisation. They will pay the bills for you. So I suppose they're the ones who are looking after some of the costs and things like that. They deal with the taxes and the invoices and so on, but you also have a lot more control. You have a lot more freedom too, because you don't have to only go through NDIA registered service providers. Now the third way you can do this is what's called self-managed. Okay? It's not still about you receiving the funds and putting it in your own bank account. It's put aside in a special account. Okay? So if you have booked interpreters, or you've booked a mentor, or you've booked an agency for various services, there's limited amounts that the NDIA will provide as payment. They will dictate how much you will be paying for those services. So you will need to keep a very close eye on what you're paying for and what you're booking. Okay, there's a lot of bookkeeping involved. You need to look out for the tax and the invoicing and the receipts and so on. It's a little complicated, but you can meet with the pre-planner and you can investigate that. For example, some interpreting agencies are under NDIS, but you might decide that you want to have another agency do the work for you. But speak to the pre-planner about this in more detail, about the 3 options that are available to you. Because the 4th option is a combined option. Okay, so you can have the best of both. So when you meet then with the LAC, once the LAC has spoken to you about your plan, they will ask you how you want the funds to be managed. Okay, it's your decision. Whether you want it to be NDIA managed, whether you want to be through a third party like an account firm or a small business, whether you want to be self-managed or you want to have a combined managed with more flexibility. So it's important at that meeting, at the end of that meeting, you need to be able to say whether you want to self-manage or you want to go through the third party managed. Okay? Now, just back on that point, if you decide that you want to go for a third party managed, which means you have another organisation or a person that will manage the funds for you, the NDIS will give you some additional funds to pay for that business to do that work for you. You will speak to that business, but you don't need to do any of the invoicing or anything like that. Okay, you will not be out of pocket for any of these things. The NDIS will give you an additional amount of money which will go to that third party.
That's right, and just to add, with the support coordinator person, you might need someone with you to help, and you don't need to pay extra for that. That will be included in the plan. That's its own line item. For some people who can manage themselves, that's fine, but for people who don't, it's important you understand that you don't need to pay for that. The money will be covered by the NDIS for that service.
That's right. So any assistance or support you need by way of overcoming any of these barriers, the NDIS should be able to support you and to ensure that your plan will suit you and your needs. Is there anything else you would like to add at this point, Adam?
No, I don't think so. I think you've covered a lot. Yeah.
I think it's really important that you read your plan, read the amount that is allotted to each line item. I'm really sorry if I'm repeating myself, but it's really important that you're aware of the funds that have been given to you. Because if you do run out of funds in any of the areas, you need to ask for a review, okay? You can ask for a review if you end up getting your plan and seeing that there's massive errors in the plan. For example, they've told you that you're going to have a seeing eye job and you need a hearing job. You can have what's called an unscheduled review. I'll talk about that a little later with Adam. He can explain a little more about that. So it's really important that you understand what is in your plan. You can ring VicDev for support, or you can go to your support coordinator, or you can ring the NDIA and say, look, I need to be able to get access to the information. There's different ways of getting around this. So if there's any questions about the plan or the funding, I'm just wondering whether we've covered everything for you.
Not so far. Okay, that means we've been very clear in our
Perhaps we
discussion
have.
and people are understanding things. Talking about the planning review now, that is important because usually plans aren't 100% on target the first time. So you might have said in the planning meeting you want support to go swimming once a month because you like swimming. Previously you couldn't be involved in that activity. And then as you go on, you've really enjoyed that swimming and you would like to be more involved, more than once a month. But the plan has allocated a certain amount for that only. So the review process, and they happen regularly, usually every year at different times. So your plan will actually say when your review is due. And that means you'll have another meeting with the LAC, the local area coordinator, to talk about your goals because they change. And in that review meeting you can say, well, I really love the swimming, I'd like to do that more than once a month, I'd like to do that weekly now. But as Liv said before, you might receive a plan and it might be wrong. It might only say, for instance, $50 for interpreting and you need much more. So they've made an error. And you can ask for a review in that instance. So sometimes reviews happen very quickly if the person finds that they're in a crisis or things have changed dramatically. Other times the review can take some time. But your planning amounts will continue. So if you ask for a plan, that doesn't mean that your funding is cut. Your plan will continue until that review happens. But again, you have to follow the line items in your plan until the review. At the moment, the plans are automatically reviewed every 12 months. But again, if people feel that their life has changed and their needs for support have changed, and you've perhaps got 9 months, you've gone through your plan 9 months, in 3 months you'll have a review. You might want to wait for that or not.
Okay, so you might have applied for your plan, you've met with the LAC, you've received your plan, and then you've realised that you forgot to add some items under devices. You needed a smoke alarm that was visual. Or perhaps in 2 or 3 months' time you're going to, maybe you move out from your parents' home, you're going to move out into a unit on your own or a group home, and your circumstances change. You can ask the NDIS at that point whether you could have a review within 2 or 3 months. You've got a review in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. There are times that you can ask for a review, but usually there will be a review at the 12-month time. Okay? At that point, you can maybe then decide that you actually don't want a review in 12 months each year. You want it every 6 months. Okay? Or maybe you've decided that you really don't need a review in 6 months. 12 months is more than adequate. It really depends on your life circumstances. If you've moved out of home, or you've been kicked out of your home, perhaps, or moved to a different area. So if your life circumstances have dramatically changed, you can ask the NDIS for what's called an unscheduled plan review. Okay, so do you want me to go into any more detail about that, Adam?
I think you've covered everything previously when you talked about the review. But you can, if something changes, you can ask for a review, or if something's missing that impacts on your life, you can ask for an unscheduled review. And I just would like to go back a little bit. Before we were talking about mentoring, And I'd like to talk about what that includes. That includes a support worker, as I said before, for instance with swimming. It could be sports mentoring, it could be general life mentoring. So some deaf people in the country, for instance, might be the only person in their community who is deaf. So they might want to have a mentor that can talk to them about the deaf community, about what it's like to be a deaf person. And those mentoring sessions can be set up via Skype. Or because life can be very isolating for those people in that situation, living in the country, being the only deaf person. So there's different types of mentoring that can be provided through the NDIS. And that's a support worker area. Sorry, I wanted to cover that before I forgot.
Just wanted to ask Shirley, are there any questions at all from our virtual audience? Do we have any questions from the audience here tonight? No? Okay, if you'd like to just explain a bit about your situation. We're just thinking that Olivia will be watching our audience member who has a comment to make, and then we'll be signing in a few moments on the screen. So please be a little patient. Okay, the person that's here in the room with us this evening says that they received their plan and they had to go to Big Deaf. In receipt of their plan, they didn't really understand the documentation that they needed to fill out. So we're also able to assist you in filling out that documentation, and there's a number of different documents that need to be attached to that, which have to do with your eligibility. So you will need an audiologist report, a doctor's report. We need to know what your residency status is and so on. Anyway, he said that he sent it off and it took quite some time to be able to receive the plan back. So he was wondering why. I think the reason why it does take so long is because the NDIA and NDIS are so incredibly busy. So many people have applied for an NDIS package. Everyone's situation is quite unique. We have such diverse communities, diverse disability groups as well. It can take months and months to be able to hear from them. Sometimes it takes a few weeks and sometimes it can even be 6 months. If it does take too long, I advise you to ring the NDIA. You can ring through the National Relay Service and ask them when your planning meeting will be. Okay, I think it's really important that you do take the time to follow up, and if you need, Big Deaf are more than happy to support you in that regard to be able to follow up the NDIA and see what the status of your documentation is.
Yeah, and really that's true. Sometimes the NDIS do make mistakes. They might try and call you as a deaf person, that doesn't work. They don't know necessarily. They just think, oh, we'll phone. But that's not appropriate. So it's important, if you feel that things are slow and dragging on, that you follow up. They might have the wrong address or the wrong name, spelling, for instance. That can happen. So just if you think you need to follow up, that you should have the plan already, please do contact them about that.
Yeah, look, the scheme is very, very new, and so they're very busy with the numbers of people that are applying for it. So we realise that even though you've applied, you know, just expect that it will take time. I suppose what we would recommend to you, Adam and I, is that if it drags on over 6 months, I think it's really important that you contact the NDIA and find out what the status is of your application, okay? And just to make sure that all the information is there, that they realise that you're a deaf person, that they obviously can't ring you on the phone and have discussion with you verbally. It needs to be perhaps emailed information or text message to you. So on that note, I think perhaps we could wrap up because I think we've probably
Just one more thing I'd like to add, maybe. Really, when you're considering for your first planning meeting, really focus on not what's happened in the past, what you've received in the past, but really think about what you as an individual want. What ideally you would like for you. What's your perfect world vision of yourself? Jot a few things down because really the NDIS, their aim is for all people to be equal in the community. So if you feel like you're disadvantaged in some way, or you're not getting access the way other people are, jot those down. Be prepared to ask for what you would like. And yeah, in point form for your interview, that would be really helpful.
And the other thing is really just be prepared that the NDIS will talk about what is reasonable and necessary. So it's not like you're going with a shopping list with a massive list of things that you're wanting, okay? You need to be realistic. You can't be, it's a little bit like, you know, going off and saying, I'm going to be the Prime Minister of Australia, okay? That may not be realistic for you. You need to think about what is realistic for you, and you know, and the types of needs that you have to get to where you want to go, to be able to achieve your aspirations. It might be you want to gain better employment or be promoted, but and maybe your English skills aren't very good. You may need someone to mentor you in English to be able to achieve.
That's true. Not all people can be equal. We're talking about same opportunities, that people can dream. But we do need to think, yeah, realistically as well. Not everyone can have everything in their plan, but it's about being equal with other members of the community.
Okay, so I'm just wondering whether we have any more questions from our online audience through live streaming. Is there anything else? Nothing else from Shirley? Feel free, you can email us at info@VicDeaf. And any comments on the live streaming as well, and you can send us an email. Any questions or concerns that you might have if you would like to get in contact with us about pre-planning or other things to do with the NDIS, please feel free to send us an email and we'll get back to you. I'd like to thank the interpreters that we have here this evening that have been interpreting for us. And we've also had Shirley, who's been fielding any questions from our online audience and also our audience that are here this evening with us. Thank you to those of you that have been watching this evening. Please enjoy this evening. Thank you very much to Adam too.
Thank you, Livy.
For being here this evening and for presenting.
No problem. And good luck for you all in the future.
Okay, so on that note, Darebin Council, who has funded us this evening. Oh, I believe we have a question. Do we? Okay. So we do have one question. And the question is, who makes the decision about what support we can get?
That's a great question. In some plans, not all, but some plans, there is items. For example, money for devices, so that's an item. So you might want a smoke alarm. So that's a specific item, and that money will be allocated, and you can't use that money for anything else. the money is not at all flexible. They're very strict about that line item. Some other things though can be more flexible, can be for a variety of support. So you don't know, for instance, when you want to go swimming. On a particular day you might not feel able to go swimming, so that money can be flexible. You can go swimming on another day. So some items are very strict in how you use that money, but other line items are very flexible. But if your funds are managed through the NDIA, the invoices are paid by them, the money is managed, and again, you can only access services through organisations that are registered with the NDIA, and there's a list with that. But if you're self-managed, you can be more flexible around who provides you services. So you have to follow government rules or scheme rules about that. If you're NDIA managed, again the government decides what services are registered. If you're self-managed, you can decide where you spend those that money on which services. They don't need to be registered with the NDIA. So again, the plan has some money that's flexible and some money that isn't. The NDIA has a list of services that are registered. If you're self-managed, you can be more flexible with who you get to provide those services.
I'm wondering, does that respond to your question? I don't think there's any other questions from our online audience. So I will have another attempt at wrapping up. Thank you again to Darebin Council for the funding to ensure that this evening took place.
Thanks for having me here tonight.
Thank you to all of you, and remember that this is Network Night, Thornbury Food Truck Park, which is just down the road, so that's great. Please let us know if you're going to come to that. I'll see you there.
Bye everyone.